Hey everybody, I'm Oakley at Oakley Does Everything.
Hey, my name is Charles, also known as Astrobatboy, New York City visual artist.
And this is Maker's Market. Stay tuned. Hey,
Hey, how's it going?
good. How are you?
I'm good. How are you
Good.
doing?
Your pod's working okay and everything?
Seems so. Yes. Yes, I would say yes.
Good. Well,
Yeah.
you have different glasses on from the last time I saw you.
Yes, I have quite a few pairs. I like to show character through my glasses. So these are my interview glasses. There you
There you
go.
go. So, do you just like collect glasses over the years, or like what?
Sort of, yeah. Yeah. I have a few, but now because of COVID and masking, I don't get to wear these a lot. They all fall off at any given moment. So these are more just for aesthetically pleasing looks for myself.
Gotcha, gotcha. Are they
Yeah.
are they prescription at least, or are they
Yeah.
just?
Oh, yeah. They're all prescription. I can't see without glasses. I can't see like past here, I would say.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way.
Yeah.
Unless I'm reading a book, I have to wear them for sure.
There you go.
So, what have you been up to? Have you been?
I'm doing good. As of now, I've been working full time. I'm back on production, working on a TV show, and it's been a full time gig. It's early hours. Overall, they're playing correctly, which sounds good because I'm part of a union here in the East Coast called the 798 IATSE, and we have to follow by contract rules. And they've been doing good. Usually back before pre-COVID, everything was like we were doing 14, 16-hour days, and it's less than that now. So it's good. It's manageable. I feel safe, but it's time consuming like anything else. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, you're based in New York City, right?
I am. Yeah.
What's it like living in a metropolis area with the pandemic going on?
For like ground zero when it all happened. So I currently live in the Bronx, which is more of a like urban neighborhood north of the city. It's minutes away by train. It's where Yankee Stadium is. We have also the New York Botanical Garden, which I went to this morning. And I grew up there and I've lived there all my life. So it's all I'm used to. No, as far as like working in the city, I would only go really for work and being in production. Sometimes you jump all around or you work on a studio. I lucked out the current production I'm a part of has a studio in the Bronx. So I kind of, not that I finagled it, but I was like, when I got the opportunity, I jumped at it because it meant 15-minute commute every day. And so when the pandemic hit, I really didn't visit the city, as I call it. I didn't visit Manhattan until probably like September. I was like staying far from it just because it seemed like there was a lot going on. COVID aside, like protests and things just didn't seem safe. There was even a point where there was looting. There was looting here in the Bronx. It was wild. But I feel like overall, from what I've seen, people have really been challenged with this, and it showed who the true New Yorkers are and who are the people that left the city.
Yeah.
But we, as a true New Yorker, I feel we survive and we thrive. So it's been an interesting challenge this year, but we're still here.
Well, that's one of the things I've heard about the culture of New York City is kind of the tenacity of, OG New Yorkers or even people that
Totally.
have, settled in and, feel like they've become that themselves. And, I've been to New York City for a couple days, but not any time long term or never lived there for any extended amount of time. But it was definitely a cool experience just as a small town Midwesterner to come and check out and see and go see the sites like Liberty statue
Definitely.
and ground zero and stuff like that. And so it was pretty cool and pretty neat there. So and I've had my fair share of living in a large city, not necessarily a metropolis like New York City, but I used to live in the Durham, Raleigh area in North Carolina, and
Okay.
it's not huge by any means. And Charlotte, North Carolina, was even larger than it, but you kind of get used to it. And I'm not quite sure I could imagine living in like that. And when you said you only have a 15-minute commute for your current work, I was like,
Oh,
wow,
it's
that must be like
amazing.
crazy awesome for.
Yeah, probably my work life like if I were to tally, it's probably been at 20 years now working, I would say, or close to it. So a big bulk of it is spent in the trains. And I felt like just doing something like where I'm able to work closer has helped with just like this subconscious anxiety of every day commuting an hour in the morning and at night. Because before I was into my union, I did a lot of non-union work, and that meant traveling deep for independent work like films and commercial shoots, and it was always deep in Brooklyn, and it meant like getting up really early and getting home really late. So I'm really grateful that now I'm at a situation that I get to live my version of a 9 to 5.
Yeah. What's the longest commute you've had to do before?
Probably it happened when I was working down by, what is it called? Bayside? No, that's more towards Long Island. Definitely south of Brooklyn, kind of going towards Staten Island. And I was working on the summer, and it got to the point where it was like a month or so working on this film, few weeks. I hit up friends and I ended up couch surfing because it got ridiculous too, because they were doing lots of transit work at night. So especially on the weekends on Friday, like we would wrap the production, let's say 10, 11, and the train stopped working. And at one night, like I left like at 11, and I think I got home like at 4 in the morning. So there you go. That was ridiculous. And that, growing up, I never thought that I'd have to learn how to drive, but it's become my mission now, especially after quarantine. I'm like, oh, I need a license. I just got my permit last week. So now I'm going to work towards getting the classes to making a real effort for it.
Yeah, that blows my mind. Like I've been driving since. So here in Iowa, we can get our
Right.
driver's permit at the age of 14,
Oh,
and
wow. Yeah,
and and I grew up on a farm, and so I was driving equipment and stuff like that even
totally.
before I was 14 years old. And and I know that, in New York City and other high dense populated areas like that, you don't really need a car. And but like here in, the Midwest, if you want to get anywhere, it's a half-hour drive kind of thing.
Totally. Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
just mass transit. You have that, and you have taxis, service cars. So it's like you never really think of it, but having transitioned into my union life, where if I do work outside of the studio, which does happen, we're going deep into New Jersey, Long, Staten Island, Yonkers, up north, like even upstate. So it just became clear, oh, I need a car, because even though the production will provide like a group situation where you go to a pickup point and get picked up, you're getting pre-called. Even in our world, we get pre-called early. So let's say I start at 5, I'm showing up at 4 at the pickup location to get to the location. So it's just become evident that like I need a car. So that's the journey I'm on.
Let's go. Like how I want to pick your brain more about this, because
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like cars are my life. I love cars. My first car was a Mustang, and so like I
Oh
couldn't
wow, my
imagine.
dad had a Mustang. That's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I couldn't imagine like getting to this point in my life and not having a driver's license. And I don't want this to sound like I'm being
not
mean
at
or
all.
anything, but like, do you know how to drive a car at this point, or like what?
I mean, I've driven, but I don't have a proper education yet.
I
When
see.
I visited family back in on the West Coast, Vegas, and they made me drive for fun, and it was easy because it was like a clear, I guess, freeways. Like they have over there just like road. The most complex thing I did is that they had a bunch of cars set up in the driveway that were being fixed, and I had to like snake my way through it. And I was like, I'm not gonna do this, but I was able to. So I, in my mind, I said, okay, maybe I have it in me. My dad, my family, we originate from Ecuador, and as far as I know, my dad was driving since he was a kid, like I think 6 or 7.
Wow.
So back then, and I have a younger brother who loves cars and everything. So I'm hoping that a little bit of that is filtered into me. So I'll be able to do it right. But I'm definitely going to take the education. I'm going to take as much as, even more so, probably like highway driving lessons, all that stuff, just to be sure. Because honestly, growing up, I never saw it as a thing. In my mind, I always just had a vision like, oh, I'll be driven around, or I'll take the subway. That's how I saw it as.
Yeah,
So that's
no,
how it can
and
be.
and for living in New York City, like, why do you wouldn't necessarily need
Hmm.
to do anything other than
It's
those.
expensive. It's like owning another apartment, from what I've heard.
Yeah, that
But where I live in the Bronx, it's doable. And I think at first I'll probably just rent until I see something that I get used to. And I just have to get more educated. As far as I know, I think I want to go the route of like a Subaru because they seem safe.
Yeah, absolutely. No,
So we'll
Subarus
see.
are, my sister-in-law and her fiance actually just bought a brand new Subaru Outback, and
Nice.
and,
All
and
right.
they like that. Like last weekend or 2 weekends ago, they just bought it, and so that was really cool for them.
Smart.
They,
All right. Good.
I
Yeah.
don't know if you heard, there's something called a derecho. It's basically a landmass hurricane. So we in central Iowa, we got hit by this. It's a derecho, and we had winds of up to like 113 miles an hour, and it was stormy and windy and stuff like that. And
Oh wow.
yeah, it was basically a hurricane in the middle of the
Yeah.
country, and we had trees down and everything like that. And unfortunately, a tree fell on top of his BMW that he had, and that he's had for a couple of years now. And so they ended up totaling it, unfortunately. So
Right.
they're about to get married, and so they ended up getting a new vehicle, and it's really nice. So like Subarus are definitely a nice option from what I've heard a lot. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm glad that's worked out for them. So to be honest, I'm not surprised just how the world is working. Every year things are getting more aggressive. We've had storms in New York. Like there was one in the past summer where we weren't locked down, but we were advised not to go outside. And just from where I live in front of the New York Botanical Garden and the zoo. So it looks like it's Central Park light to us because it's a beautiful view. I live on the 14th floor, so I'm able to see this view. But we
Nice.
saw trees, and we saw stories from people that we had heard trees falling on cars. So I was like, this is something that typically doesn't happen, but it's becoming more common now over here too. It's wild.
Yeah, and of course, like a couple of years ago, Sandy or whatnot. Like
Yeah,
you were around for
that
that
hit
one.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep. I wasn't affected by it, but I knew a lot of people. I have friends who had houses in Staten Island that got totaled, and they had to move out and start over. It's wild.
Yeah, that's a bummer. Well,
Yeah,
I'm going to change the subject a little bit. We're going to do
sure.
some of these this or that questions, and
Okay.
like I might give you a broader spectrum, like who's your favorite, whatever character, as opposed to giving you one or two options. But so here's a couple of them. What's your favorite Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle?
So I like all of them because they reminded me of basically they're based on referencing the great artist masters. But for me, for some reason, I'm always drawn to strong feminine energy. And I know when they did the later ones, I really love Venus, of course. She was psychic, and I love powers. Anyone that has like superpowers, I'm always like, oh, I'm a fan of. So I I played the video games. I played them as all, and I liked them all because they had their quirks. But definitely for some reason Venus, because she was like such a different version of them that I was really attracted to growing up.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
I
a
wasn't
little
expecting
twist.
that.
Yeah.
Cool. All
But I
right.
loved all of them because I love the fact that they were all based out of different artists. And just
Yeah.
like that, like I have love and I respect so many different artists because I learned from them, you know?
Right. Awesome. Okay. Mac or PC?
So because of my past and work, I can do cross platform. But as of now, for personal life, I use PC because it's the more affordable of the two.
Hmm.
But for work, I use Mac, Apple, just because it's more intuitive with working within a network and with other people in the department. But I can go either or.
Yeah.
But I do thinking about it. Okay, I would say more PC just for maneuvering around things because I still use applications like Photoshop and I edit. So like I'm just kind of accustomed to PC now. But if I had to, I could jump to either.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Let's see. What's your favorite streaming network?
Uh-huh. As of now, my subscriptions are I have Prime, I have Netflix, I have Hulu. But honestly, I'm not subscribed to it yet, but like I watch more YouTube more than anything, I feel, because I use it as like therapy where I'm part of that whole ASMR world where I love to listen to things before going to bed or just to get calm or
Yeah.
listening to like different types of podcasts and things like that. You know, I it's such a wider access and it's in its own way niche, but
Right.
there's such a like underworld that I love. You can go into that hole of YouTube and end up a whole nother side you didn't
Yeah.
expect to.
Going down the rabbit hole of
Yep.
YouTube.
Oh yeah. Exactly.
And I might agree with you. And I actually never stopped to think of YouTube as a streaming network. And I know they have a
Movies and stuff, right?
yeah,
And
I
their
know
own
they have
originals.
a
Yeah.
paid option for it, but I don't subscribe to that. But yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely spend most of my time watching YouTube as opposed to
Yeah.
other things.
I, I feel with the other platforms, I'll spend a good 30 minutes of surfing, and then at the end, I just go back to YouTube because I saw nothing that really interested me.
Yeah,
It happens. As of
yeah,
right now, the only thing I'm rewatching a lot of shows on Hulu that I grew up. Like I'm on season 8 of Family Matters, so it's just because it was a show that I loved growing up,
yeah,
and it was fun. It was like Family Matters, Boy Meets World, like Step by Step, Full House, those kind of
yeah.
shows. And I was just like, let me try to like restart one, and I'm glad I did. It's been fun because it's a weird feeling of like, oh my gosh, I remember this, but then also like I don't. But like the minute you do, you're like, it all comes back to you. It's amazing.
Yeah, and those are a lot of those shows are shows that I grew up watching as well. I was more
Yeah.
of the after school cartoons and Saturday morning cartoons kind of
Oh,
person.
totally. Yeah,
But
yeah.
but those
TGIF and Saturday morning cartoons.
yeah, exactly.
Love. Yeah.
All those shows were shows that my older siblings watch and my parents watch, and so in the background I'd watch it too or whatever. And so
Definitely.
yeah, it's crazy how you can catch up with all those things now. So that's kind of neat.
I'm definitely waiting because it's supposed to be a premiering at the end of the year, but dinosaurs. That is one that like I've been waiting for it to be released. And I think Disney Plus is going to be releasing it towards the end of the year. So I'm
Okay.
excited for that. That's what I'm
That's the
I can't wait.
not the mama, not the mama. That one.
Yep, no,
Yeah. Okay.
I'm the baby. Yep. Yeah,
That's
basically.
awesome. No, I
Yeah.
I totally remember that. That show was right. It started, and I got to watch
Hmm.
about 10, 12 minutes of it every morning before I had to leave to get onto the school bus. So
Same.
I never saw a full episode of it.
Same. I feel like, and it became one of those where it started to jump around, and then it started airing on weekends, and then I think it even might have aired at night, part of the TGIF. So like it was hard to stick with. Like the only ones I remember growing up, I went to Catholic school, so I'd have to get up early to study, but also I would get up like at 5 or 6 in the morning to watch anime. I was like a Sailor Moon fanatic, of
Yeah.
course. So that was like my biggest things I felt that I stuck to. And I started to rewatch. I did rewatch a lot of the films a few years ago, and I had started to watch the remakes, but I couldn't stick to it. So I love the original just because of this nostalgic element and like how fun it was that it explored things that we weren't allowed to like look at in the US back then.
Right. Well, and so I just finished rewatching all of the Sakura card captors. I don't.
That was a great one.
Yeah.
I saw part of season 1, but I was that point. I remember I was in high school and school was getting harder, so like I had stopped.
Yeah.
But yes, that's on my list of things I want to rewatch. The art was amazing. Those
Yeah.
cards, designs. Oh,
Yeah, absolutely. And both seasons are on Netflix, and so that's kind of how I just rewatched it. And
amazing.
I just set it on my phone while I was working on my bench doing whatever I can't even. Oh, I was working on my chairs, rebuilding the chairs that I've recently finished, and or halfway through finishing. But yeah,
Yeah,
and so it's just nice kind of having that sentimental stuff in the background, just kind of be like, oh yeah, I
exactly.
remember that. Yeah, no, that was cool.
It's it can be a hit or a miss because like maybe 2 years ago, I had started rewatching Gem and the Holograms, and I that was hard to watch. That and She-Ra, like there were shows I loved as a kid, but they're so boring. Rewatching them now, they didn't like carry over, I feel. And
Yeah.
plus they were problematic in their own way. Like I always felt rewatching the Misfits should have been arrested because they committed crimes and it'd always be like, it's fine. Just don't do it again. It's like, okay, next week we'll try to kill you, but whatever.
Well, that's so interesting that you say that because a couple of years ago, my wife and I we were at the library and we found a copy of All Dogs Go to Heaven.
Which I saw during the quarantine. Charlie, oh my gosh.
Dude, those dogs are such bad influences.
There was some dark themes. It was such an adult cartoon, but that's how it was back then.
I
80s
know.
into the 90s, it was cartoons that were meant for kids, but parents could watch too. Like I
Right.
actually the other day, yesterday morning, I rewatched Cool World because it was a movie I was obsessed with as a kid because I used to love drawing Hollywood, played by Kim Basinger, and I rewatched and I was like, what the hell was I watching? This is like an adult film in its own right. I was like, wow, really
Yeah,
dark.
absolutely. Like we were so surprised to like see that stuff, and the reason I brought up Card Captors was you were talking about how it kind of has more themes that we weren't really exposed to as
Yeah.
in the States or whatnot, that Asia, Japan, whatever, um, for their animes are more susceptible to. But they had themes of like little kids that seemed to have love relationships between within the same gender that I didn't quite
Hmm.
catch. And then there was also a lot of like age discrepancy between like love interests in some of those characters as well.
Oh yeah.
And because like Sakura's dad was a teacher and he ended up marrying her mom, who was like 16 at the time, and he was her teacher. And it's like, oh, come on, like
Interesting.
stop giving
Yeah.
teachers a bad rep or whatever. It's like the stereotype,
Society
and so
in
that blew my
Asia is so
mind.
different too. Yeah.
Yeah,
I get you. I do remember though, Sakura was different from Sailor Moon, where Sailor Moon had like the villain of the week. Sakura really didn't have villains. Like they had like their own drama, but it was really more positive, I felt like in general, like compared to Sailor Moon.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely it was, because yeah, it was her goal was to catch the cards or to capture
Hmm.
them, and so they might have been, some of them might have been mischievous, but they weren't evil per se. And even like
Exactly.
the villain in the second series wasn't a villain, he was just doing it to try to improve her skills. And so it was so, yeah, it was so interesting
Yeah.
that you brought that
Yeah.
up. And because
I'll
I
definitely put it on my list. It's on there for sure. I definitely, for some reason, once I had stopped with that, I still followed. You were either Pokemon or Digimon. I went into Digimon just because I love the idea that the animals can go back and forth,
yeah,
so you could still keep the original cute version if you want it.
yeah,
And like
I'm
I used to
actually
love drawing them.
rewatching the second season of Digimon right now.
Oh, nice.
I
That's
I'm
awesome.
already through the first season because it's on Hulu. They have like
Yeah.
four seasons on Hulu right now. And so yeah, I'm about 10 episodes into the second season of
Oh, nice.
Digimon.
That's things really pick up then, I feel.
Yeah,
Because unlike Pokemon, I remember Pokemon would really make you work for it. Like, no developments wouldn't like a development would happen every 8 episodes. Digimon somewhat sped up. And I remember the movies too were a lot more darker, which I enjoyed.
yeah.
Like they were more like Godzilla-esque
Right. Yeah,
animated.
they
Yeah.
had a big mass end of the world kind of thing
Yeah.
that they had to overcome. And yeah, that's what I like the Digimon movies too that way. I think for me when it comes to Pokemon versus Digimon, it's Pokemon games, Digimon show, or
That
plot.
sounds about right to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, we were on that tangent for a
We went into that
while.
rabbit hole. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's okay. Let's
Yeah.
see. What is your favorite makeup palette to use?
Oh wow. That's a great question. So it may be a two-parter. I am an airbrush fanatic, so I would love to use more so airbrush, but it's hard to do details. So classic creams, like something like a Makeup Forever. It's called like the Flash palette, but many other brands carry it now, and it's just it could be in wheel form or like a palette form of different cream colors, which you can use for anything. You can use for eye bases, lips, brows. You can turn it into foundation, which I've done like in a quick, like, oh no, you need to do something. So if you have that with some powder, you can make anything happen. And it's also like the type of creams that people use if you're doing from a beauty, editorial, fashion to fantasy, theatrical makeup. So it's really versatile. So I would feel comfortable working with something like that.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Brush or blender?
Fingers. I'm not like loyal to any. I'll use a brush, I'll use a blender, but sometimes well now with everything's different, you can't use fingers as much. I mean you can, you just have to be more hygienic in between.
Yeah.
But I'm not I'm very much like, I'm not a loyalist when it comes to those kind of things. I'll do whatever works for needed at that moment for that
Let
specific
me rephrase the
application.
question then. If you could only use one for that particular how you do it, would you only use a brush or would you only use a blender?
A brush, because you can still blend with a brush,
There
pretty
you go.
much.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. What was your favorite non-arts or like non-elective subject as a kid?
Cool question. I'll be honest, growing up, like as a kid, I remember saying, "Oh, I'm gonna be an art teacher. Oh, I'm gonna be an artist." So I always went with that mentality, and art really was my most favorite class. Like I would go through things like, "I'm really bad at math, but it's okay because I'm gonna be an artist." I would literally say things like that.
Yeah.
Um, Honestly, anything that allowed me to do a project like on my own that included art. So like science projects where if we had to make dioramas, I loved it. And I would ace those. I would do bad at testing, but I would do great at anything that I could fabricate.
No,
So it's
that's
kind of like a funny question.
I
Lunch, does that count?
I can, yeah, I can relate to that.
Yeah.
If you could only use one kind of brush, what would it be?
In terms of what? For
Makeup application.
a synthetic one, meaning that it doesn't have animal hair fibers, because you can wet it, you can do it dry, and it's pretty versatile. So I can get far with that.
What about like, the kind of brush, whether it's like the size or, thickness of it or density? How about that?
So there are like specific synthetic brushes. Let me see if I can pull something out.
Yeah.
Huh. I have here my little station where I would do myself. Let me see. Let's see. I'm a visual person, so I feel like I need to see.
No, I totally get it.
Yeah. Something like in between like this, I would say. Where so this is a synthetic compared to like a natural hair.
Hmm.
It can take water, it can go dry, but within a range like this, I don't have it on me, but maybe even something more in between like this, because you can do a lot with this. You could do something from eyes, lips to a full face. If you have the willpower, you can do it. Yeah.
Nice.
And it's just it handles anything. It can means that you can do creams, you can do liquids, you can do powders. And I like to work with things that don't tie me down to one specific medium.
Cool. All
Yeah.
right, I think I got two more questions. What is your favorite coloring style? Like painting, coloring, like what are your favorite kinds of painting, coloring techniques?
Yeah. So growing up, I even now, and we spoke about this before, I'm impatient when it comes to creating art. So for me, I love a definite, like I've set the lines and I move on. So I quickly gravitated towards ink work. I dabbled a lot with like comic book illustration and even some manga styling. But at that time, I always shied away from color, believe it or not, just because it felt like it was time consuming. And also, I realized I was talking about this the other day, how growing up, I just like staying inside the lines of coloring. And I was told, what are you doing? So being told like to play within those rules, I just stayed away from it. But as I got older, I was attracted to black ink and illustration. So I got into doing markers. I would say color, what is it? Prismacolor, Crayola, and then sometimes the occasional like Tombos or Copic markers were nice, but those were expensive. But I liked working with that range. So I've now that I can afford more art supplies, I've dabbled more with watercolor. Back then, I liked it, but I didn't know how to properly use this, so I use it as a challenge. So if you've been following what I've been doing with my prompts for Halloween Witchtober, you see that I go back and forth through marker work and watercolor. And it's become like a nice little safe space that I feel like I can do what I want to do
Yeah,
within a good amount of time.
nice. So originally more grayscale and
Yeah, yeah,
more recently watercolors then.
yeah.
Nice.
And it's just funny how like my art style was always colorful, but at the same time, I love jumping back and forth from muted styles to either full color. It's like how I say with my makeup artistry, I like the natural to the supernatural. So I love playing both fences. It depends on how I feel. I maybe just want to do black and white, and then some days I just want to like color everything.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah.
And my last one is, what is your favorite, or who is your favorite character from The Politician?
Okay, it's a great question. So I'm partial to someone I took care of, and that's Ronnie, who plays I'm terrible, forgot her name. I'm terrible with names. I'm a good visual person, but she had really fun makeup that I got to do that was very edgy and out there, and we experimented with her character, especially season two. She was going her season one, she was very just grayscaled, lots of blacks, very broody, grungy. That was in high school, but now in college, she was experimenting with pops of color. So it was like really a phase that we got to have fun. Like I actually worked with her recently and it was a whole different character. And she was like, blue lip today. And I was like, no, because that was something we'd do on The Politician. We could have fun. And then even if this might be, I guess, giving spoilers, but as you'll see, like you jump ahead, she goes from that fun experimenting to going to a more natural look. So doing makeup on her was fun. But my personal favorite character would have to be Hadassah, who's played by Bette Miller, because she's a bad bitch. Just watching the things she says, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And that goes to really Ryan Murphy. He really writes really good female characters, really strong with good catchy phrases.
Nice. Yeah. And so now that we're talking about The Politician a little bit,
Yeah,
I want to know, I guess for my sake, I haven't gotten into season two, which is kind of where
yeah,
you became a lot more involved in with it,
yeah,
since it does take place in New York or on the East
yeah.
Coast anyways, which is where you're based in the first season is California, Hollywood, LA area, um, Santa Barbara, something like that. And
Hmm.
so what is a day in the life of a makeup artist
Sure.
in terms of getting actors ready? How long do you have to stay there? I know you guys usually have to get there earlier. What's your responsibilities after they go on set and stuff like that? So
Definitely. So I like to say that a makeup artist's job in production is being strategic and being 8 steps ahead. Basically, you're always prepping and pre planning because you want to be able to anticipate any changes, but also at any given moment, you need to be able to say, this has been taken care of, this is being handled, and you never want production to wait on you. Like you just mentioned, work first. So on a normal day, you start the night before, going with your department, speaking to any other departments, going over what needs to be accomplished for the following day, setting goals, and then addressing it the following day. So waking up anywhere from 3 to 5 in the morning to get ready to go to work. And we get pre-called from any regular crew call because essentially they want talent to be ready to go the minute we start working. So that just means automatically my job line, we start anywhere from an hour to 4 hours ahead, depending on the complexity of what's going on. So you arrive to work, to location, you go to the trailer and set up the station. And now things are different because of COVID. So we have more prep time, meaning we really have to wipe things down, clean, change things out just to ensure that we're starting with a really clean setup. Because, of course, we'll change in between actors, but it's important to really clean and start fresh from the get go. And then, based off of that, you work with your talent. Uh, Following whatever prep work you did that oh, you're on this in this scene, not this scene, you have this look, later on we have to switch it to another look. So you anticipate and you're giving estimates to people so that they know when to expect the character to be on set. And you're also working with like hair department and wardrobe, which can be collaborative, where like uh the costume designer basically selects the clothing. So based off of that vibe, you start saying, well, I see I can take you this route, check in with hair. What are you guys thinking? And it's a fun and collaborative process. But then once you're done, you pretty much pack up and you go to set with them. Unless you have other work happening or other matters that you have to stay at the trailer, you go to set with them and you have to watch them. And basically, you're at a monitor for a good amount of the day, making sure that they're staying matte, not too sweaty, nothing's running, just because everyone's human and things happen. But also with that now, because of COVID, we're not allowed to go in for touches as much. So I know, like I was told, I think like a lot of productions are putting more money into post production to fixing things. So like if we're not able to jump in just because of safety reasons, we have to let it go, which is a weird feeling because when it comes to classical makeup, it's about symmetry and perfection. So you want to make sure that you're setting up your actor for longevity, especially with them now wearing face masks and shields. Things move around. I mean, granted, you are given time, but you also have to prepare them. So we've been doing tricks of like using different types of mixing mediums that are meant for like tattoo coverage, which are waterproof and have longevity. We're reworking for their like face and things like that. So it's new challenges that we've been given, but above all, you're there with your actor and you're making sure that they look their best or their worst, depending what the scene calls for. You
Yeah.
have to make sure that it's accurate and that it's continuous to any other scenes, because in a production world, we're not working in a linear line. You may be starting at the beginning of a commercial, a show, a movie, and then the next day you're back at the beginning and jumping around. So it's really important for you to have your catalog of photos that you take and your notes so that you know what's next to come. So you're not putting on someone in a crazy look that's not meant to be happening.
Gotcha.
Yeah, yeah. And then after that, you take them back to the trailer. Sometimes you take off their makeup, sometimes they do it themselves. You clean up again and you get ready to do it again the next day.
About 5 hours later.
Depending. We
Yeah.
do get, thanks to like certain like SAG and stuff, lots of actors get turnover time. So we have to follow by their rules, and a lot of them tend to be 12 hours. So they have to give us anywhere from 10 to 12 hours turnover legally. So we do get some kind of like rest.
That's bit, yeah, yeah, good, good. Well, that's good. Because we talked last night about different things, and one of the things that I always found so interesting is I enjoy watching behind the scenes footage
Yeah.
about when it comes to movies, and one of the best documentations I've ever seen with behind the scenes footage is stuff like Lord of the Rings. I
Oh, sure.
because
Yeah.
I when they came out, I spent the extra money to get the extended editions, which also came with 6 discs worth of behind the scenes footage. Ends up being like 12 hours of behind the scenes. This is how they made the miniatures. This is what they did for makeup. This is what they did for prop making. Like all
They
these
spent
different,
money.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so just kind of me being that kind of behind the scenes nerd, I get to pick the brain of somebody that is behind the scenes and has experienced that, and that was one of the things that I've always thought was probably the most tedious part of making a production of any kind was makeup, because depending on what they do, how extensive it is, how complex it is. But one of the things that I have always thought the funniest was, and I guess this might be more special effects, but when it comes to the hobbits from Lord of the Rings, that they would do, and maybe you can talk about this too, the feet that they had to put on the hobbits, they would
Yeah.
spend like an hour and a half applying it so that it looked seamless going from their skin to the props. And they calculated it in the movie that you could only see clips of the hobbit's feet 10 different times in one of the movies. They're like, we did
Oh,
all
yeah.
that for like very little. So
Yeah.
like, what do you have any frustrations, or in similar situations where you did a
At
lot
times.
to a certain thing?
Yeah. Yeah. Because with makeup, and maybe that the fact that I also come from the artist mindset and having my body paint background where I can spend anywhere from 8 to 12 hours on a piece. It gets shot or recorded, and then I have to be okay with the fact that it gets washed off. All that work, all the hard work that went into it is washed away. So I see it the same as that, where like this is what you're doing, because aside from preparation, you have to be able to multitask too within the makeup world. So considering that, you need to just cover your bases, because there have been times where like you can be, this is early on my career doing non-union work, I was assured of things like, no, we're not going to see that tattoo, it's going to take too long to cover it, don't cover it. And then you're seeing in a monitor the camera decided to move and you're seeing that tattoo, and it's like you need to just cover your bases, because whether or not it's seen, it's part of the character, so you have to invest your time into it. And it's what, if you're into character building, which I am, it adds to it, and it also allows the actor to feel more as that character. So it's all about the nuances for us. And like I said, it's multitasking too, because at the same time, you're doing these things. I'm not, so the way a production works is that the department is usually run by three people. The number one, which is the department head, the number two, which is the key, and then the additional, which is like a third person. On most productions, I've been lucky enough, I'm the third. So I'm there to really support the first and the second, but I've been lucky enough to be given access and ability to really see what they do. And going into this field, I always said, I'm not a multitasker. I really don't do well with situations thrown at me. I have to process and think. I'm very much a person where like I will be that type of person that says, I should have said that 5 minutes later from a conversation. But it's really challenged me to step up my game. And I'm learning now that it's kind of cool to be able to multitask in the sense that you're going to be doing more than just makeup. Makeup, honestly, is probably like 40 to 50% of the job. You're doing so many other things, meeting with people, talking to other departments, figuring out things, booking other people for the rest of the month, the week, figuring out things. So it kind of feels like a game strategy most of the time. To the point where like during my break, I was even doing logic puzzles because I realized logic puzzles are so similar to what we have to do in a department. So it's making sure that yes, you're putting the details into everything, but then also stepping back and making sure everything is working. So it just goes back to that, like we need to make sure that toe is black. It has to be black because it's been set up as black. And you never know, it may or may not show, but you've done your job.
Yeah. Well, and you kind of read my brain again, kind of like last night, you got to a point that I was planning on getting to, but the whole logistics of it and coordination
Yeah.
between you and your models or actors or even the other departments, like you were saying earlier with hair and costume and stuff like that, making sure that all your things coordinate and everything flows
It's a
together.
group effort for sure.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And that's really cool. And that's um, another thing that I always found really interesting about it, because I I don't when I was growing up and it came to learning new things and stuff like that, I was not book oriented. I couldn't really read something and learn from that. I'm a very hands-on person, and
Same.
I find myself to be a very logical person when it comes to trying to figure out things, as opposed to intelligence person. I know they're both kind of their own kind of intelligence, but when it comes to like logic versus maybe theoretical thinking, I don't know. I like to I find the logistical part of it enjoyable because it is like a puzzle and trying to find all the
Exactly.
pieces to come together.
Yeah. It's one of the reasons why I love body painting or doing fantasy makeup, because it's new territory. Yes, you can draw, you can paint on a flat surface, but doing it on a body is a whole nother realm. So you're constantly running into roadblocks that you have to figure out the best solutions. And that's where a point where I kind of become meditative and I can be quiet and just full on do it. It's the same thing with makeup. Once I'm enjoying something, I'm not much of a chatter. Once again, I'm not a multitasker, and I'll let talent know, you can sit back, close your eyes, let me take care of you. Because once I start talking, I'm going to stop. But if I'm in the moment, I love to step back, like in drawing, take your steps back, take a look, and figure out what's the next approach. And I'm happy that I found a correlation with that within my department, that this is a good skill to have, and I'm trying to really make it grow and progress it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your body painting. So
Yeah.
I found out about you through Instagram with kind of like your Superman comic book body painting that you did, and
Yeah.
from what I learned from you the other night is that a lot of your following or a lot of your fans actually came to you through a lot of your body painting.
Yeah.
How did that kind of pique your interest, and how did you find that you got your following through that, and why you think that captivates a lot of people?
Sure. Myself, like many people, I love the art and power of transformation. Taking a person, and whether it's an alter ego or completely changing or embracing something that's within them, always fascinated me. Going back to being like a little kid and watching a movie like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and being like, wow, I want to be able to make something like this someday. Or Legend, one of my favorite movies with Darkness, watching this like huge, big demon character. I was not afraid. I was just fascinated. I was like, I want to make things like that. So as I grew up, I was allowed to play in makeup specifically for Halloween, and I went all out. I would be a zombie one year. I was probably like a vampire like 6 years. I really played around, and it wasn't really more so until like after high school when I was an adult and I started venturing more into the city, and I had definitely delved into like the goth scene, but I I was allowed to express myself, but it wasn't until really I got more into my queer space that I got to see more of the fun world of club kid makeup to drag makeup, and I dabbled a little bit with it, and I just loved it from the get-go. But I really learned that I love to apply it on other people. I love creating characters. I don't necessarily like being a character. It takes a lot for you. It's training, but it's something I never thought that would lead into body paint. Body paint kind of came out as a fluke. Uh, by now I've probably been doing it 5 or 6 years. And like one of the first times I did it was I was working with a photographer, and we specifically were doing headshots, and I was doing hair and makeup for different talent. And then one day he saw that I draw, and he said, I have a client who wants to get body painted for something. Would you be interested? And I was like, sure, I'll do it, because I didn't feel confident in it, but I felt like what he wanted, we can do, I can pull off. And it was so much fun. And it took me to that moment of being back to my traditional art where I got to create and have fun. And I was able to use the canvas of the body. So it kind of from that moment sparked this like, I can have so much fun doing it. So I pursued it as like a fun thing, working with different photographers. And eventually I worked for a few different like event agencies where you show up to a gig, and a lot of the time it's like, just paint this person gold. Like honestly, just ambiance people and or marbleize them, which is fun. But then Halloween would happen, or events like Comic-Con or even Dragon Con, and I'd get hired to do these things, and I really got to just go all out and make characters. So it was kind of like a full circle moment where as a kid I was like, oh, I want to be able to make people into things I'm finally getting to do as an adult. And to me it doesn't feel like work, it feels like I'm playing. So it was not expected, but because it's something I love to do and I put a lot of passion into it, I think I was able to really nurture this effect that people could see what I'm really invested in. So they too are attracted to it and can see the effort that I'm putting into it. So they showed their love and would follow. And specifically with that photo you mentioned was with a photographer named Mike Ruiz, who's a well-known celebrity photographer, who he scouted me through Instagram and said, would you like to come to my place in Jersey one summer? He brought a whole bunch of people. We joke around saying it's like a sweatshop. It really isn't, but like in the sense that he literally has different teams of people working around, and he'll shoot the different things, but he gives you free reign, and it's always fun. And that concept just came of him saying, do whatever you want. And I said, give me a theme, because I'm not coming up with anything. And he said, why don't you do something pop art? I was like, okay, I've got the colors. I've got you. You have the model. I banged it out in 4 hours. We went to a diner and we shot it. The people loved it. Like one of the shots, the guy's sitting next to these older ladies, and they loved it. It was fun to see them react to it. Like normally when I've done my job as body painting for an event or something, you set them and you leave. You leave some things for them to remove it, or they remove it at home, but you don't get to see the reaction people have. And that was such a fulfilling moment, to see people enjoying it and having fun with the creation. And from that moment, I knew that was magical. I was like, wow, this is cool. And that photo alone was one of a few that really brought people to me and like followed me. And I sense since that they want to see what I'm up to next. I feel a little bad only because with it being Halloween soon, with everything going on, I'm not taking any work. So I'm still debating, because I haven't seen my schedule for work this week. But if I'm not working too late on Friday, maybe I'll get up on Saturday and do something fun on myself. We'll see. It's an idea, but I would love to do it to fulfill myself and to give something to the people who've been supporting and looking at my work.
Yeah, and it's so cool. Like if you just scroll through your Instagram feed, there's so much of it, and not all of it's full body. Like some of the pictures are just shoulder up or whatnot.
Yeah.
I don't know if those are only shoulder up, but like they're so incredibly detailed, and some of them
Thank
are
you.
like pretty graphic. Like I've seen some zombie ones with some flesh falling off and the teeth or
Oh yeah,
whatnot.
yeah.
And those are really really cool to be able to see and whatnot. So when you were doing those, were you, I know you mentioned that you went to Dragon Con and you ended up staying in your hotel room basically doing this for a bunch of people.
Yeah.
Are a lot of those all from like clumps of periods of time, or do you get models to do this on kind of regularly before the COVID stuff happened?
So specifically, Dragon Con was my first time attending, which was last summer. It had always been on my like to-do list. That Burning Man, like I want to go and create and be a part of the community. And it was just randomly, I had been speaking to someone and they wanted to get painted and they were attending. And I said, well, I've been doing good with work, and I know specifically during that time, work gets not so busy. So I said, I know if I buy my ticket and you pay my rate, I can make this work and maybe I can pick up other work. So I just put the feelers out there and hit up like the Facebook groups. And I forgot to mention this. I competed in a like competition just because I was like, I'll be there, why not? So I kind of just went there open mind. I didn't win, I didn't place, but I went and I got to meet people, and people loved my work. That I got a good amount of work. I had anywhere from 1 to 3 clients a day that I was there. So me with the intention, oh, maybe I'll do one good piece and then I get to enjoy it, didn't happen. I did get to go at night with 2 clients where like I was done. I was like, I'll go with you. I'll take photos because I want to get you in the space. But as soon as I was done, I was like, I'm going to bed because I was tired. But I got to see everyone party. I was like, oh, I'm jealous. This is fun. But also I'm tired. So I'm going to go to bed. So with that said, hopefully in the years to come, I'll be able to go specifically. Like this is also my roles now for Halloween. I don't do a lot of people. I rather just do quality over quantity, meaning that I rather save myself for that one client that wants the full effect and wants a full transformation that I even have to prepare for to get them to that for that day. I will make sure it happens. I will be invested in like, let's make you this, rather than doing just a few faces because it's money that I have to invest. I have to get a studio to rent and maybe promotion. Like it's I have to spend money to make it, so it has to be worth my time is what I would say.
Well, maybe a suggestion for you if you do try to do that. I know that uh, I haven't necessarily been to any of the huge cons like C2E2 or New York Comic Con or Dragon Con. Last year, my wife and I were planning on getting to Dragon Con, and then our daughter's due date was that weekend, so we decided
Oh
not to
wow.
go.
Right,
And
right,
then she
right,
ended up being 5 weeks early, so it's like whatever.
everything
But
happens for a reason.
yeah, but anyways, maybe
Yeah.
maybe one thing you could do is actually rent out a booth where you can go set up shop, and then people can watch you do the process of painting and stuff like that. And I don't know how hard it would be to set up a studio, but it can also be like a demonstration as well. And
Yeah.
you get somebody to pay you to do the body art. You get exposure because people are seeing you do it while in the process. And then you could do like a tutorial too or something, or like hey, come around 2 o'clock and I'll talk about this thing. So maybe
Well,
that might
that's
be.
what I was thinking more about,
Gotcha.
is maybe doing like a workshop, because something I learned specifically with Dragon Con, cosplayers are talented creatives that really prefer to do things themselves or figure it out.
Yeah.
So me coming in as a service provider, it's more so for a specific person that who is willing to give the reins up. But what I found is most cosplayers are true, like they're gonna figure a way to make the makeup,
Yeah.
the costuming work on their own, which I respect. So I was thinking of maybe then giving some kind of education to help people with that, more so than providing. Because like I said, I want to go to enjoy it, but I would really rather just do one. I'd rather do one than like a few. Because, and I'm not trying to downplay, but then it's more like I'm doing like a face painting booth, which is fine. I probably would do airbrush because it's the quickest, get people out. But I'd rather like do it as a workshop where I can teach people the tricks that I've learned and be a little more like a community. That would be kind of cool.
Yeah, no, it definitely would be cool. And you were also talking about how you're transitioning, or at least your Instagram feed, with being in quarantine, or at least
Right.
doing more social media or social distancing stuff. You kind of transitioned your social media posting from the body paint, the makeup stuff, and more into sketch art. Like, tell me a little bit more about what you like to draw, and why you're kind of going that direction.
Yeah. So I specifically decided to take it this route just because of the situation with everything, not being able to work with other creative teams at this year. I said at first, let me work on myself, which was fun, but also I don't have a proper studio. So it gets messy, especially with face and body painting and so much glitter fly everywhere. I was like, let me take a break on this and let me do something which I've always been doing. Pretty much I still draw, I paint. I just for some reason haven't been sharing it. So I made it a point to this year show more of my progress with that. And I did a little research and was looking into, let's say if COVID still, it's very much our lives, and it looks like it's going to be around for the next few years. So what's a good way to adapt myself but still be artistic? Let me unleash this side of myself that I've always had as a kid. Before I did makeup, I've been drawing and I've been painting, creating characters, and specifically drawn from anything that's beautiful to mystical or creature like out of this world. I love fantasy, I love horror, but I've always been drawn to some kind of form of femininity and beautiful likeness. With my work, you always see like a soft side or something colorful. Even if it's masculine, the term, it still has an edge to it that softens it, which I love. And so I figured a good way to balance myself and try to see what I can do for my future is transition myself on a side hustle of doing art. It was always like a plan of mine, even when I got into my union for makeup. I always said, ideally, I want to do makeup 50% of my time, and the other 50%, I want to make art. And it's the point where I would love to do shows, possibly some books, some installations, and be able to nurture that side of me, which I I consider myself an artist, but not a full-time working artist. And that's so I would love to see how I'm able to facilitate that. I started doing YouTube videos. They're a little behind now, like in terms of like pushing them out. So respect to you because it's a lot of work, a lot of planning and a lot of editing and just setting up everything to make it go seamlessly. It's a lot of work. It's a job. It's its own job. So it's something I'm still exploring, and ideally it would be great to end up with doing a Patreon or something where I'm able to create for people that want what I'm making. So that's the goal, and that's why there's been this transition into my art. And it's, once again, specifically, I've always been drawn to female characters, portrait illustration. I love characters. I love things anywhere from the pinup world, and I don't try to specifically tie my art style to a specific one. If you notice, like my art in general, it's very versatile. Most people, like in the makeup world, will stick to doing bridal or tutorial. I jump around. I'll show even horror, which is not a taboo, but people rather have you commit to something. But it's like I like to do it all. I'm not an expert at all of them, but I love to do it all. So I'm going to show you what I can do. And it's the same thing with art. Primarily, I love feminine characters and I love to make them. But when it comes to styles, one day maybe I'm feeling a little more comic book, a little more illustrative, a little more anime style. So I'll venture into that. Even with the last few I've come up for this coming week for my Witchtober. I'm going to do a little more like illustration kids book based because I've always been into stuff like that. So it's
Nice.
just fun. I get to play.
Yeah, no, and we talked a little bit last night about how you and I both enjoyed to being able to do whatever we feel like doing in that moment.
Yeah,
I am working on projects throughout whatever, and you're talking more about themes or styles of drawing and stuff like that. And it just it keeps things new and enjoyable that way, I think, for me. And
totally.
and also you hear a lot of people dealing with burnout, and I feel that is a good way to overcome it, because you don't you may be working a lot, but you're not doing the same repetitive thing over and over again.
Hmm.
And so it's a little bit less stressful in that regards too. So
Totally.
yeah,
Especially with this being like a side project per se. I want to be able to wake up to want to do it. I don't want to feel like, oh, I got to get this
yeah,
done. So for me, it's whatever wakes me up to want to create is I'm going to do that. And I'm lucky enough to do it. So I'm doing it.
nice, good for you. All right, well,
Yeah,
Charles,
thanks.
can you tell people where they can find you on social media?
Definitely. Pretty much on all platforms, I go by Astrobatboy. So that's like Astro Boy, like the manga anime, but bat. And that goes back to AOL days when like you had to choose a name. I put Astro Boy, but it was like Astro Boy set of numbers. I was like, I don't want numbers. I was so goth at the time. I put the bat, and I always kept it because I said to myself, my joke is, if I become a DJ or a rapper or a graffiti artist, like DJ Astrobatboy sounds awesome to me, so that's why I've kept it. And plus
Nice.
with my art, I'll tag people too. You'll like a Dragon Con. I had commissioned from Etsy from someone to make me a stencil, and I was tagging people with Astrobatboy so people knew where to find me. So yeah, on all platforms, Twitter, TikTok, which I really don't use, but it's there. Instagram, yeah, YouTube, Astrobatboy.
Awesome. Cool. Which one would you say you probably post the most to?
Instagram, because it's the easiest right now for me. I'm really trying to get better at YouTube. I originally had planned to make a set of videos and get them ready and scheduled. It didn't happen because work picked up much sooner than I thought.
Sure.
But hopefully during the holidays, I'm able to bang out a few more and have them ready to go. I'm going to try to commit myself to a video a month. So we'll see what I can do.
That'll be good. That's a good starter goal for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, I think that's going to wrap up our little interview here, but I thank you so much for doing this with me. I really appreciate it, and it's been a blast talking to you about, you know, and picking your brains about all these different things that I've never experienced before. So thank you for doing that. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Oakley, for having me. This was really fun, and thank you for letting me share my story. It was cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, everybody, I want to thank all the viewers so much for watching. We very much appreciate it. And if you haven't done so yet, please hit that subscribe button. It's in the middle of your screen. If you're interested in seeing more Makers Market videos, I have a playlist somewhere up there. And if you want to see other videos that I might be up to, I would appreciate it if you check that out as well. But other than that, we are going to see you guys on the next video. Thank you all so much for watching. Appreciate it. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, that's going to be it. So,
cool. All right.
Awesome.